number 14 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on International Trade. The committee is meeting today pursuant to Standing Order 1064 as requested by 4 members of the committee to discuss their request to undertake a study of the impact on Canada of the European Union transparency and authorization mechanisms for exports of COVID-19 vaccines. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. To ensure an orderly meeting, I need to outline a few rules to follow. Interpretation in this video conference will work very much like in a regular committee meeting. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. Use the hand raise function to indicate your desire to speak. When you are ready to speak, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic, of course, should be on mute. Should any technical challenges arise, for example, in relation to interpretation or a problem with your audio, please advise the chair immediately and the technical team will work to resolve them. Please note that we may need to suspend during these times as we need to ensure that all members get to participate fully. Right, so to the motion that we have on the floor.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, to interrupt so early in the committee meeting with a technical issue, but I do not seem to have a raised hand function option on my Zoom at this time. I wonder if other committee members do, and it is simply a technical glitch on my end.
Can you check now and see if you have that ability?
No, we don't.
Not have it.
I see no one has that.
Madam Chair, would you like to perhaps recognize people with their hands raised literally, or I'm open to your suggestion?
Well, let me start by doing it that way. I do have a speakers list, so if we're consistent with what I was given as a speakers list, we'll be all right while they try to correct that. That's okay.
A speakers list for the debate on the 106 motion, Madam Chair?
Yeah. The speakers list is just for the panelists and the witnesses. Okay, so for those of us on committee, just raise your hand and make sure that I notice it. All right. Okay. So to speak to the motion that we have before us, Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to thank the clerk and the committee staff for putting this meeting together so quickly, and also to all of the members of this committee. And I'll be brief, as I understand we want to go to this motion and that the minister is prepared to answer questions. And I'd like to thank Minister Ng for her responsiveness in coming to this committee. I think it's pertinent and very timely that we hear from the minister on what Canada is doing regarding the COVID-19 vaccine export control measures put in place by the European Union on Friday. As I understand, Canada was not explicitly listed as a country which is exempt from these measures, unlike nearly 120 other countries. We also can't forget that our approved Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are shipped from Belgium and Spain, respectively. I hope to see all members of our committee support this motion due to the importance of this issue. And so therefore, I'd like to move that given the announced transparency and authorization mechanism for exports of COVID-19 vaccines in the European Union, the committee invite the Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade and her officials to appear before the committee for no less than 2 hours regarding matters related to the European Union's export controls and its potential impacts on Canada's COVID-19 vaccination strategy. And this meeting will occur no later than February 10th, 2021.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Gray. Ms. Bedian, please, Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would like to thank all of the colleagues on this committee, and in particular, thank the Conservative member who has raised this important issue. Obviously, we have been working around the clock over the weekend, and I have, in parallel to that, been working in order to secure the minister's appearance before this committee at the earliest possible opportunity. We are Monday morning, and I'm pleased to advise all committee members that the minister is available to appear immediately after this discussion. And so I would invite colleagues, unless they have any urgent matters to raise in connection with this debate, that we move quickly to hear directly from the Minister.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion that's before us? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hands. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Mr. Blakey wishes to speak to the motion. Go ahead, Mr. Blakey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick word to put my support for the motion on the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. So it's voted on unanimously that we move forward on the motion. Okay, Madam Clerk, are the panelists? Do we need to suspend to do a sound check for the panelists?
Well, we need to suspend because for now, like the no officials, neither the minister has been able to connect. They have received the information to do their connection, so I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to check with the with the staff, but I don't have any news on that. But for now, we'll have to suspend. Yeah.
So we've adopted the motion. So we will suspend momentarily until we've got all our witnesses and the minister prepared to meet with the committee. Okay, Ms. Gray.
Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want a clarification how long the minister would be with us today. And
well, our meeting goes until 1 o'clock, so hopefully we're not going to lose very much time with getting everybody connected. So we'll have lots of time. Okay, so so the committee will suspend for hopefully just a minute or two until we've got everybody connected. Thank you. I'll call Minister Ning for opening remarks, and hopefully by that time we have the officials connected. Is that okay with everybody that we do it this way? So we just don't lose too much time. I know everybody's schedule, especially the ministers, is very tight. All right, Minister Ning, would you like to give opening remarks, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Merci, Madame la Présidente. And
thank you, Madam Chair.
Morning, I guess maybe good afternoon to everyone, to the vice chairs, and of course to all of the members of the committee. I am happy to be here today to discuss what our government is doing to ensure critical supply chains for vaccine remains open and resilient. Je suis heureuse d'être ici aujourd'hui pour discuter.
I'm pleased to be here today to discuss the measures taken by our government to ensure that the supply chains that are essential for vaccines are open and resilient.
Securing timely and adequate supplies of COVID-19 vaccines for Canadians is our government's highest priority. We knew that vaccines will be vital to ending this pandemic, and that is why Canada has 7 vaccine procurement contracts covering the largest number of vaccine doses of any country in the world. Our government has diligently sourced vaccines manufactured in both Europe and the United States, countries with whom we have strong free trade agreements to mitigate against any export restrictions or other potential disruptions. On January the 29th, the European Commission brought into force a temporary transparency and authorization mechanism for exports of COVID-19 vaccines. Under this regulation, exporters require authorization before they can ship their COVID-19 vaccines to ensure that advanced purchase agreements with the European member states are being respected. As soon as we learned about the forthcoming measure earlier last week, I immediately reached out to my counterpart, European Union Trade Commissioner and Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis. In that conversation on Thursday, before the EU made their announcement, I pressed on Canada's continued expectation that this mechanism not have an impact on Canada's shipment of vaccines. I reiterated that Canada has advanced purchase agreements with vaccine manufacturers in Europe, and we expect that those agreements be respected. Vice President Dombrovskis provided strong reassurances that this mechanism will not delay vaccine shipments to Canada, and we both committed to continuing our work together as we have since the beginning of the pandemic. Last week, Prime Minister Trudeau also spoke with the President of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, and received the same reassurances that our vaccine shipments would not be affected. I had a second conversation this past Saturday with Executive Vice President Dombrovskis once the EU measure was officially announced. Once again, he assured me that the EU's measure would not have an impact on Canada's vaccines and that we once again reaffirmed our commitment to continue working together. Yesterday, Health Minister Patty Hajdu spoke with the European Commissioner for Health and Food Safety, where she also received clear assurances that the EU mechanism would not affect shipments of vaccines to Canada. In addition to this, Minister Garneau will be speaking to his European Commission counterpart later this week, and Minister Anand is in constant contact with suppliers. Given that we have vaccine shipments coming from Belgium, I also reached out to my Belgian counterpart, Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium, Sophie Wilmès, and spoke to her yesterday afternoon. Deputy Prime Minister Wilmès also provided me with the clear and explicit assurances that Canada will not be affected by this mechanism. Let me be crystal clear. Canada has expressed our continued expectation that this mechanism will not impact Canada's vaccine shipments, and we have received repeated reassurances that shipments of vaccines to Canada will not be affected. We are pressed with this issue and ensuring the flow of vaccines so that all Canadians have access to safe, free vaccines without delay is our government's top priority. Il s'agit d'une question.
It's an urgent issue that we're taking seriously, and it's a priority of our government. We want to guarantee the distribution of vaccines so that all Canadians have access without delay to safe and free vaccines.
Also been proactively engaging with decision makers in the European Commission and key member states to ensure that there are no inadvertent impacts on Canada's shipments. In every interaction, our counterparts have confirmed that there is no intention to do so. As a result of Canadian interventions from ministers and our diplomatic posts, there are efforts underway to streamline the process for Canada's shipments this coming week. From the beginning of the shipment process, prior to the introduction of this mechanism, our European posts have been working diligently with Canada suppliers on the management of border and other logistical issues to ensure Canadians are able to access COVID-19 vaccines as quickly as possible. Canada's diplomatic network across Europe is also keeping close track on how European Union member state governments are carrying out their obligations under the mechanism. We understand that one motivation for the EU-wide mechanism was to preempt any local or national measures, making it even more clear that this will not affect, and it was not intended to affect, Canadian shipments of the vaccine. We are taking a whole of government approach to this important issue, as we have done with the entire pandemic, engaging with the EU and member states at every level to ensure that Canadian vaccine shipments will not be impacted and that Canadians will have access to safe and free vaccines. We're also analyzing and monitoring the mechanism to ensure that the EU respects its trade obligations under the World Trade Organization rules. The specifics of how a measure is implemented is also important. We are looking closely at how the EU is implementing the new measure and will continue to monitor to ensure that the mechanism is applied on a non-discriminatory basis as required by international trade rules. The European Union is a trusted partner of Canada. We share close people-to-people ties as well as a robust free trade agreement. Canada will continue to expect that the European Union Commission's mechanism will not affect Canadian vaccine shipments, and that we will continue to work with the European Union with fairness and transparency, including in our work of promoting rules-based international trade. Since 2018, Canada has led the Ottawa Group on WTO reform, working with like-minded international partners, including the EU. We have made progress on multilateral rules-based trading and are collaborating with like-minded partners to encourage all WTO members resolve the appellate body impasse. When the pandemic arose, the world saw 97 countries respond to COVID-19 by implementing more than 220 restrictions on cross-border trade. Canada and the Ottawa Group members continue to do their work to strengthen supply chains and to reduce COVID-related barriers to trade. Today, only 138 of those restrictions remain in place, and the work continues. Canada and the European Union have jointly championed the WTO Trade and Health Initiative, which calls for no new unjustified export restrictions on medical goods, including vaccines. Canada will also continue to leverage its leadership role within the WTO, the G20, and the G7 to promote universal access to vaccines. We will continue to work with all countries towards ensuring that responses to COVID-19 do not impose unjustified or harmful burdens and to support equitable access of vaccines. We know that COVID-19 has no borders. It is a global problem that needs global solutions. Both Canada and the EU know that we can only successfully fight this global pandemic when everyone has equitable access to vaccines. As long as one country is at risk, we're all at risk. Since the beginning of this pandemic, our government is committed to a strong global effort to stop COVID-19 and address its devastating health, social, and economic impacts on Canadians and people around the world. Securing a safe and effective vaccine for Canadians is the #1 priority for this government. Canada will work steadfastly with our trade partners and will continue to strengthen and protect global supply chains. If there's one thing we want Canadians to know, it is this. We are on top of this. We're always operating with urgency on anything concerning Canadians getting vaccines rapidly. Ensuring supply chains stay open and resilient means the flow of food, medicine, so that businesses can open again. Kids can safely go to school. Families can gather, and both our society and economy can recover and thrive into the future. We understand Canadians are concerned, and we share the urgency of Canadians to ensure access to life-saving vaccines as rapidly as possible. Our government is operating with this sense of urgency every single day. Nous comprenons que les Canadiens.
We understand that Canadians are preoccupied, and we are working very hard in order to guarantee vaccine access as quickly as possible.
I'm now to answer any questions that you have for me. Merci à tous. Thank you.
Thank you to all.
Thank you very much, Ministering. Just to our
We have
clerk,
two officials in
have
the
we
room.
got our panelists? So we have two officials connected.
Yes, we have two
Okay.
officials connected. The ambassador is she can't connect. She tried, but she can't connect. So I think she's following the debate on Pearlview.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on then. Okay. On to our speaker list. And again, thank you, Minister, for being here so very quickly. We very much appreciate it. It's an important subject. Okay. On to Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here. Minister, I understand that you've received assurances from your EU counterpart that Canada would not be affected by the COVID-19 vaccine export controls. Has there been an agreement signed in writing regarding this, and can you table this today?
Thank you for that question for my honorable member. Yes, I have received repeated assurances from my counterpart as the Prime Minister has from the President, and it has been through telephone conversations.
Okay. Do you have any assurances that you've received that are binding or might carry penalties if the European Union subjects Canada to exports controls over the COVID-19 vaccine distribution?
As I have said, I have spoken to Commissioner Dombrovskis before the measure was introduced, after the measure was introduced. I've spoken to my counterpart in Belgium as well, and we have received repeated assurances that the mechanism that is in place will not affect the vaccine shipments that are coming to Canada. But this is very serious, and we take this very seriously, and will continue to work at this steadfastly.
So, Minister, you don't have anything in writing from any of the officials. You only have a verbal assurance, is what you're saying today.
I have multiple assurances through myself and through Minister Haidju and from the Prime Minister that vaccine shipments to Canada will not be affected by this mechanism.
Okay. The Executive Vice President and Commissioner for Trade for the EU stated, and I quote, "This time-limited and targeted system covers only those COVID-19 vaccines that were agreed by, quote, advanced purchase agreements with the EU. We don't see any statements that cover other countries like Canada. Can you table today information from the EU that advanced purchase agreements, such as from Canada, are also included?"
The member rightly points out that the EU has specified in its regulation that it is mindful of the advance purchase agreements contracted, and that they continue to respect those. And I certainly have been clear, as my colleagues have, that Canada expects that our shipments will not be delayed and will not be affected by this mechanism.
Okay. Minister, can you table these telephone conversations?
I have shared the readouts publicly as soon as they were completed, and they are available publicly already.
Ms. Gray, you're on mute.
There we go. Is Canada being added to the exemption list of countries?
countries like our other trading partners like the United States or Australia or the UK are also not on this, are not on the exemption list. And as I have said to the honourable member, I have received assurances, as the Prime Minister, and we will continue to work on ensuring there are no delays to Canada's vaccine shipments.
So why would Canada not be on this list? And can you table information that outlines if Canada will be treated the same as countries that are on the exemption list?
The work that is being done by our missions on the ground, so what I like to say, the trade team, Canada's trade teams, who are there to serve Canadians, are working with their member state colleagues as well as with the European Union to ensure that, and the companies, to ensure that they are supported all the way along so that they are meeting the requirements set out in this mechanism. And we continue to do that work on the ground. I continue to do this work with my counterpart as my government colleagues are doing as well.
Okay. Now, the other part is companies seeking to ship vaccines outside of the EU bloc have to obtain prior authorization. Can you table any documentation of prior authorization allowing shipments of vaccines to Canada?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I think it is, you know, can I assure Canadians that that the mechanism that the EU has put forward will not delay or impact Canadian vaccine shipments? And there, the answer is yes, I have received assurances.
Thank you very much. On to Mr. Dhaliwal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, as you know, some of us have been elected for many terms, and I've been on the International Trade Committee almost in every term. And I tell you, Mr. Ng, you are one of the best that appears on a very short notice, and I want to thank you for being accessible. Mr. Ng, it's my understanding that 1.1 million vaccine doses are distributed across Canada to date, and not only is Canada among the top 5 G20 nations for COVID-19 vaccinations, we are also in the top 2 contributors to COVAX to ensure equitable access to vaccines around the world. Even if no additional vaccines are approved by Health Canada, Prime Minister recently announced that Canada is expected to receive 2 million doses of Moderna and 4 million doses of Pfizer by end of March. Could you please elaborate on that and whether we expect to receive the 6 million doses within the next 2 months? And also, it's good to know from you, from my constituents, I would also like to thank you that the shipments of vaccines will not be affected by this EU mechanism as well.
Well, I want to thank the honourable member for that question, and being accessible and transparent and having the opportunity to speak directly to Canadians through this committee is absolutely important. So I very much appreciate the invitation that I received on this very important issue. I know how urgent this matter is for Canadians, and we are seized with it, which is why you heard me talk about how we are on top of it, and we intend to stay on top of it, and how serious it is for me and for my colleagues and the Prime Minister to ensure that there is no disruption in the shipment of vaccines to Canada. And that is, and those are the reassurances that I have received directly from the Executive Vice President, also Trade Commissioner Dombrovskis in the EU, but as Minister of Health, Minister of Health Hajdu has also received the similar assurances from the Commissioner of Health in the EU, and the Prime Minister has as well from the EU President. The member The honourable member also talked about the number of vaccines and what we expect, and we are expecting to be on track to receive the 6 million doses of vaccines from both Pfizer and Moderna. And we expect that we will be able to vaccinate 3 million Canadians by the end of Q1, just with those vaccines that are approved right now. And as my colleagues have shared publicly before, Canada has procured a robust portfolio of vaccines for Canadians, and absolutely. The EU and Canada, we all agree that that COVID-19 has no borders, and that we all need to work together to fight COVID-19 together, and to make sure that the people around the world also are able to have they have access to vaccines. We're going to continue to work on this. We must continue to work on this, but I want to assure you that it is absolutely my top priority to stay on top of this and to work on ensuring that vaccines get from the European Union are not disrupted through this mechanism and make their way here to Canada and for Canadians.
Minister, what would Canada do to ensure that Canada's international supply chains remain resilient and operational to receive all those doses in the coming months?
Well, that's a very good question. Canada has been working on the resiliency of supply chains throughout this entire pandemic, right from day one. As I said in my speech, we did see countries put up export restrictions during this pandemic, and we've been working steadfastly with our like-minded colleagues, trade ministers, to ensure that to ensure open supply chains for critical food, critical medicines, including vaccines, remain barrier-free. And that work continues, and I'm pleased to lead Canada's Ottawa group, working with colleagues to do just that.
Minister, also Prime Minister has clearly said that that anyone that want to have vaccine, they will receive those doses by end of September. Are we still on schedule?
Yes, to the honourable member, we are. We are confident that that Canadians will be vaccinated who wish to have a vaccine, and it will be free, and that will be done by the end of September. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Dhaliwal. On to Monsieur Sabard-Tremblay.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Thank you to Madam Chair for giving me the floor, and hello to my colleagues. I would like to go back on this vaccination problem. Last week, no vaccines entered Canada, and we don't anticipate that they will be coming into the country. We know that Pfizer encountered certain problems in Europe, and we were not able to turn to the Pfizer plant in the United States. The American administration passed an executive order that made things more complicated. There is now a new president, President Biden, and the first call that he made as president was a call to our Prime Minister to inform him that there will be a reinforced Buy American Act, and to also tell the Prime Minister that the Keystone XL pipeline project would not go ahead. And so for the Prime Minister, these were two failures. And so do you know if during these negotiations they negotiated something regarding vaccine supply, seeing as Europe's supply is not guaranteed at this time? Thank you.
Colleague, for that question. We have procured vaccines from Europe, but also from America. Of course, the vaccines that are due to arrive in Canada in Q1 is from the EU. The Prime Minister and the President, of course, of the US, of course, did speak. And in that conversation, the Prime Minister reiterated that that Canada's supply chains and our interconnectedness between our two economies is absolutely critical. He also reiterated that absolutely Canada and the United States will continue to work together, whether it be on COVID-19 or building back better to tackle climate change and to be able to create opportunities for Canada's and Americans alike, creating good middle class jobs here in Canada. But today, I am pleased to be able to answer your questions and to speak to the committee and to Canadians about the efforts that we are taking to ensure that that we are doing everything, absolutely everything, to ensure that Canada's shipments of vaccines are not delayed coming from the European Union.
Si je comprends que vous travaillez.
I understand that you're working hard, that the United States are our most significant trading partner. I would like to go back to my question. Both heads of state had a conversation some days ago. And so did they speak about this? Because Joe Biden told the Prime Minister that two issues that were near and dear to his heart are a failure. And so during these negotiations, can we require a supply of vaccines from the U.S. pending the shipment of vaccines from Europe? So would it be possible for this period, and did they speak of the possibility of having supplies of vaccines from the U.S. during this conversation?
For that question, we have made public, the Prime Minister's office has, of his conversation with the President. I want to assure Canadian workers and businesses that we continue to be actively engaged with our American partners at all levels, whether it is through the President and the Prime Minister, but also certainly our ambassador to the United States. And I'm looking forward to speaking to my counterpart once the confirmation process is completed in America. But we certainly remind the Americans that Canada is the top customer. We are the largest customer to some 32 states, larger than that of than Japan or even China. So the relationship between Canada and the U.S. is absolutely critically important, and we are committed to working together with our American neighbors. We have a new trade agreement through CUSMA that enables the two countries to continue our work, providing very important access to that very important market for Canadian businesses, small businesses, women entrepreneurs. This is very important, and we continue to do that work with our American colleagues, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with the American administration in an effort to build back and in this economic recovery, but also during COVID-19 for Canadians.
Combien de temps, Madame la Présidente?
How much time do I have left, Madam Chair? 1 minute? I think it's unfortunate. You did explain how important the United States are as a trading partner, that you're looking forward to working with the American administration, but I repeated my question twice and you didn't answer my question, and so I will reformulate my question. Is there any chance that we may have a special supply of vaccines from the United States while we're waiting for shipments coming from Europe? Yes or no? Thank you.
I want to assure the honourable member that that we are expecting 6 million doses of vaccines from Moderna and from Pfizer, and this will enable 3 million Canadians to be vaccinated by the end of Q1, with many more vaccines to be coming. We have secured.
Madame la ministre, combien de doses cette semaine et combien?
How many doses this week and how many doses last week did we receive here in Canada?
Is up, Mr. Pierre Tremblay. Savard Tremblay.
Sauvé par la
Maybe
cloche, comme
we
on
can
dit.
get you back on another
Saved by the bell, as we say.
round of questions. All right, on to Mr. Blakey for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Minister, for being here at committee today. The new European measures allow governments where the vaccine is being produced to review the export plans of the drug companies for exporting the vaccine, and in the case that European supply would be jeopardized, to ban the export of those drugs to the other countries, except that there is a list of countries that are exempt from that potential ban. So would you say that the verbal reassurances that you've received from European officials offer a greater or lesser degree of protection than being on the exemption list?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I would point out that that countries like Australia, the UK, and the US were also not included. But I am reassured by my colleague in the European Union, as well as my colleague in Belgium, and I will continue to do work with other member states, as does our team. This work is absolutely top priority, so we must continue to do this work to make sure that this mechanism does not affect the supply, the shipments of vaccines to Canada.
And would that ongoing work be required if Canada was on the exemption list? Or would you be satisfied if we were on the list that our supply was protected?
Well, I think that anything with respect to COVID-19, and certainly anything to do with whether it is business supports, but certainly with respect to vaccines, which we know are so important to Canadians and to the health of Canadians, we would continue to put the absolute priority on this work, just as we always have.
So am I hearing that you're indifferent to whether Canada is on the exemption list or not? Did you ask at any time for Canada to be on that exemption list?
It's absolutely my top priority to do everything we possibly can to ensure that the advance purchase agreements that Canada has negotiated, that those contracts are respected, and that the doses of vaccines and the shipments of vaccines come to Canada without delay, and that is not impacted by this mechanism. So absolutely my priority, absolutely with tremendous seriousness, and it is a whole of government approach, including the team that we have on the ground who is working at all levels.
If the European Union were to offer tomorrow to put Canada on the exemption list, would you accept?
Of course, I would welcome that. I would welcome anything
so
it is
a higher level of protection than the verbal reassurances that you've received so far to be on that exemption list. That would be a value-added proposition for Canada to get on that list. Do you agree with that?
To make sure that we continue to have the assurance that Canadians get these vaccines without delay and interruption is going to be and continues to be my absolute top priority. And I will work at everything to ensure that that work continues with that level of urgency as we have applied, and we will continue to apply.
Given the special relationship your government has touted between Canada and Europe, given CITA, in fact, you mentioned it earlier in your opening remarks, did you ask for an explanation as to why Canada wasn't included on that list of exempted countries?
What we did right from the very beginning, upon learning that this mechanism was going to be introduced, I reached out to my colleague and was very clear about Canada's expectation that our contracts be respected, and that there would be no delay or interruption to our vaccines coming to Canada. This work, of course, this assurance, of course, was received by the Prime Minister directly from the President, and we're going to keep doing this work as we need to. And I do have to, give a thank you and a support, and I hope everyone will, to my officials who are on the ground and who are just working around the clock to make sure they are in touch with their EU counterpart as well as member state counterpart to both monitor, but to also work with the companies to make sure that any obligations that are required, that they're helping the companies do that to meet those obligations so that we really do ensure that there is no delay.
So since the list of exempted countries was published, have you been in contact with anybody in the European Union to ask why Canada was not included on that list?
I've spoken to Commissioner Dombrovski and have been very clear with respect to Canada's expectations. And as I said, as I've repeatedly said, we have received assurances that this measure will not affect Canada's vaccines.
I hear you on the assurances. I'm wondering if you've received an explanation for why Canada was on the list and whether you found that explanation satisfactory.
Well, I would also point out that Canada, as well as countries like Australia, the UK, and the US are also not on the list. The countries that are on the list, I mean, I think where Canada and the European Union would have steadfastly supported is ensuring that that least developed countries continue to have access to vaccines and that they are not that they do not experience delays. It's why Canada has been participating in COVAX and has been a consistent supporter of ensuring that the global community also has access to vaccines. I think everyone agrees.
Does that, incidentally, Madam Minister, sorry, but does that include supporting a waiver for the TRIPS provisions at the WTO?
Well, you know that Canada is a steadfast supporter of the WTO. I, through my work with Ottawa Group colleagues, continue to ensure and advocate for a rules-based international trading order that is respectful of the rules. And what we are talking about and what we are absolutely focused on is making sure that that the vaccines to which Canada has procured does not experience impacts or delays as a result of this mechanism that the European Union has put in place.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. On to Mr. Lobb for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first question I have for the Minister is, it's in regards to the advanced purchase agreements, the contracts. Is the government willing to publish the parts of the scheduled deliveries? Is the government considering that so it's more transparent for Canadians?
Well, thank the honourable member for that question. I think that as the Minister of Trade, I'm not able to give you that answer. I think the answer is better directed to my colleague, the Procurement Minister. But suffice it to say that throughout all of this, we have endeavoured to, just as I am today, to be transparent.
Okay, so that is perfectly reasonable. But in your discussions, we as the government, we've kind of held our hat on the fact that we have these advanced purchase agreements. So if a company like Pfizer is scheduled to deliver 4 million doses in March and they deliver 3.5 million doses in March, is that a breach? Is that a breach in your purchase agreement?
Well, again, I think that that question, I want to make sure always that to my colleagues and to the committee and certainly to Canadians that I'm providing accurate information, and I'm just not able to give you the information specifics with respect to contracts. But I know that
But in fairness, Minister, you've gone on television, and I have your words about advanced purchase agreements and how these contracts will be respected. But when you come to the committee, I think it's only reasonable that you would be able to tell us about a breach, because that is what's really is hinging on some of these export rules. Because let me ask you this question: the advanced purchase agreements, is it a schedule by month or by quarter, or is it a total dose at the end of a period of time? Can you tell us that?
Well, what I can tell you is that that the consideration for advance purchase agreements that have been contracted by third countries like Canada is, will continue to be respected. That is the assurance that I have received from my colleague in the European Union, and we all operate on a rules-based system. And as I have indicated to you and to my colleague, that we would expect, Canada would expect, that our contracts be honored, and that this mechanism would.
But we don't even know. We don't even know what's in the contract. With all due fairness, we don't even know. So, if we only receive 3.5 million from Pfizer by the end of March, is that a breach of contract? Is there anybody here today that can tell us that, or is there an official that's been advising you can tell us, is that a breach? Because that really hinges on my next question.
Well, what I can say to you is that the advance purchase agreements that that Canada has with the companies is to be respected. That is, we have been clear about that with our colleagues in the European Union. I have certainly been clear about that as well with my colleague in member states such as Belgium.
Sorry to cut you off, but AstraZeneca CEO Pascal Soriot said, our contract is not a contractual commitment. That's what he is on the record of saying. And what I would say is, if I was a European Union commissioner, I'd say, you know what? Fantastic. We will not do anything with the export authorization regulation as long as it adheres to your APA, because the APA is meaningless. It means nothing. The CEO of a company has said a contract isn't even a contractual commitment. We're at committee and we don't even know if it breaches committee or breaches a contract on 4 million. So this is quite a situation that the government has put Canadians and Canadians' lives at risk, I would say. What do you think, Minister?
Well, what I would say is that I think all of us on all sides of the House are very committed to making sure that we are transparent with Canadians.
But that's not true. You're not, because we can't see the contract.
Excuse me, I think I can
Allow
speak the same time
to
speak.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I think that Canadians expect all of us to work together. I think that we need to work together in an effort to ensure that there are no disruptions, that Canadians get the vaccines that we have procured, and that the vaccine rollout to Canadians are done. Working closely with provinces and territories, that's one part of it. Making sure that these vaccines get into the country is the other part of it. And I think that Canadians are looking to all of us to make sure that we are working together to engender that confidence.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. On to Ms. Bedian.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to thank the clerk and all the public servants that were available to answer quickly and organize this meeting with the Minister
for making herself available. I know she had to move many important discussions in her schedule in order to make time for the committee and respond to questions from committee members, but I also know that she feels that it is important to come to committee and to respond to our questions, and I thank her for that. Just picking up on the conversation that we were having a moment ago with respect to advanced purchase agreements, I would like to point out that it is my understanding from the text of the EU regulation that the European Commission is mindful that advanced purchase agreements contracted by third parties, including Canada, need to be respected, and that they will work to ensure that the expectations of all countries, including Canada, to obtain their deliveries will be met. I wonder if you could speak a little bit more to that, Minister, particularly the work of our government in order to conclude many months ago now, many different contracts with, I believe it is over 7 different suppliers, and how that has put us on a solid footing to continue to engage with our allies and ensure that there are no disruptions to our shipments of vaccines for Canadians.
I want to thank the honourable member for that question, and maybe I'll start answering sort of from where she left off, and that is that we understand absolutely and we share this with everybody on all sides of the House, the absolute urgency for Canadians to have access to life-saving vaccines and to make sure that they are readily available. And this is the sense of urgency that the government works on every single day, myself and all of my colleagues and the Prime Minister. With more than 1.1 million vaccines distributed across the country to date. Canada is among the top 5 G20 nations for COVID-19 vaccines. And we are on track to receive 6 million vaccines by the end of Q1, 20 million between April and June, and a total of 70 million doses by the end of September, just with the approved vaccines alone. And our government continues to stay on top of this. And with respect to the advance purchase agreement, that is noted in the EU's announcement, and the regulation is clear about in respect of APAs that have already been contracted by third countries like Canada. And in the conversation I had with my counterpart on 2 occasions, the Prime Minister with President von der Leyen, the Health Minister with the Commissioner of Health in the EU, we have received repeated assurances that Canada's vaccines will not, our vaccine shipments will not be affected by this measure. Having said that, we take this very seriously, and we will continue to work on this here, and the team that is on the ground in the missions in Europe, the Team Canada that is on the ground, continues to work with the companies as well as the member states and the European Union to ensure that there is no disruption.
Merci, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you, Madam Minister. I know that you've had several discussions and you will have more over the next hours and next days. In reality, this work started a long time ago.
And many other representatives of government have been advocating for the continued free movement of goods across borders, even during COVID-19. And as we saw other countries turn inwards and let's say it on the record, we saw other countries move towards protectionist policies. Canada was a leading voice in order to ensure that our supply chains remain open. Perhaps you can take a step back and tell us a little bit about that important work and how that work is actually feeding into some of your conversations with your European counterparts.
Well, thank you for that important question. And you're absolutely right. The work that Canada has been leading on with like-minded countries certainly preceded COVID-19. Canada leads the Ottawa Group with a number of like-minded countries like Australia and Japan. The EU is included in there, New Zealand, Singapore, Switzerland. And throughout and what we've been working on is to ensure that supply chains flow freely and that protectionist measures are not in place. And as I said earlier, we did see protectionist measures at the very beginning of this pandemic in the order of 90 countries, over 200 restrictive measures. But I am pleased that during COVID-19, the Ottawa Group and its members have worked on a plan to make sure that there is greater transparency so that if measures are put forward, that they are filed with the WTO to ensure that critical supplies like food and medicines continue to move around borders, and to make sure that we are working on trade and health. In fact, this is an initiative championed by both the European Union and Canada to ensure that we are enabling key goods, critical goods, essential goods, including vaccines, move freely, so that there are no impacts on people in our countries.
Thank you, Minister. On to Monsieur Savard Tremblay for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello again, Minister. you say that you're working with the EU to ensure that we get a supply of vaccines. We know that there can be unexpected things that happen. For example, Pfizer has reduced the number of doses that they had planned to send us for this week and next week. Moderna was supposed to deliver 230,000, and now it's 180,000 doses. Do you have a precise plan in case European Union cannot provide you the number of doses that they were planning to send? What's the reaction of Canada?
Thank you for that question. The delay or slowdown at Pfizer is a temporary situation, and I want to remind the member that Canada continues to be well positioned to receive vaccines from both Pfizer and Moderna, and that Canada continues to be on track to ensure that every Canadian who wishes to have a vaccine will have one for free by the end of September. We are absolutely steadfast in ensuring that the plan to vaccine Canadians continues to be on track, and my colleagues and I and the government is absolutely seized with ensuring that this is done without delay.
Je vous remercie, mais
Thank you. But I'd like to hear more in detail with more precision about what is the plan if that doesn't happen? What is the plan B? If the number of doses or if it is reduced or if there are no doses that are sent, what is Canada's plan?
To answer a question that both
Briefly,
my colleague,
please.
Health Minister and Procurement Minister work on. I mean, I'm very focused on making sure that there is no delay through the mechanism, but suffice it to say that there is no priority more urgent than making sure that vaccines get into Canada.
Thank you very much, Minister. On to Mr. Blakey for 2.5 minutes, please.
Minister, I've heard two things that taken together I think are cause for concern. One is that Canada has paid a relatively high price for access to some of these vaccines. Of course, hard to verify because we don't have access to the purchase agreements. The other is that one of the motivating factors for the European Union's recent move is that drug companies are withholding vaccine shipments to countries that have paid lower prices in order to send them to jurisdictions that are paying higher prices. That would put Canada, if you take those two things together, on a potential watch list for places that are receiving vaccine doses, given what we're paying. So I'm wondering if you can provide a little bit of insight into what Canada is paying compared to other countries, and some reflections on whether Canada signing up early at a high price means that we're on a potential watch list for exports to watch underneath this new European accountability mechanism.
Well, let me start with Canada and the EU. We're countries that are respect of the rule of law in my the multilateral trading system. Canada is very proud that, on the advice of our vaccine task force, has procured a portfolio of vaccines that ensures that Canadians will have access to vaccines, and that our vaccination plan for the end of September is on track, and the European Union has also said that the advance purchase agreements that Canada has entered into will be respected. The EU is a trading partner of Canada's, and we are very clear in our expectations, and through the assurances that I have received and that of my colleagues and the Prime Minister, we expect that these shipments of vaccines that we have placed come into the country so that Canadians get the vaccines that they need.
As I hear your testimony, I can't help but think of all the Canadians right now who are struggling with letters from the CRA because they were told by a government, if you apply in good faith for CERB, you're not going to be penalized later. A bunch of them are finding out that those reassurances from a government didn't really mean that much in the end. There's confusion about the net and gross income and all sorts of reasons why people did apply in good faith. And then the terms and conditions changed underneath them. What I'm hearing from you is that Canada has some purchase agreements. Nobody really knows the details of them. It's an open question whether the European Union has access to those agreements. And we're being told, well, just trust us and take our good word that the rug isn't going to be pulled out from beneath you later. And I'm wondering why Canadians who have just lived through and are living through right now an experience of having a government say, just trust us, and are facing financial ruin, are going to be open without some more evidence, like details of the purchase agreements, et cetera, to believing your government when it comes to something as important as vaccine deliveries as well.
Thank you, Mr. Blakey. Minister, I'll turn it over to you if you can give us a brief answer.
I think the 9 million Canadians who helped to flatten the curve and were supported through CERB would say that that was a necessary support, and I'm thrilled that we all agreed to make that available and continue to provide the supports, whether it is small business supports, in overhead support, rent support, wage support is provided to Canadians. I think that we have to continue to be as diligent as possible and with urgency as possible to help Canadians get through COVID-19 in the measures that have been introduced, but also in ensuring that life-saving vaccines are given to Canadians. And as I have said earlier, we are on track to do that for all Canadians who wish it for free by September.
Thank you, Minister. For the information, the officials have finally been able to get connected, so they are online, but the ambassador to the EU, unfortunately, was not able to connect. But the officials are at least there if anyone has questions for them. On to Mr. Hoback, please.
Well, thank you, Chair, and Minister, it's good to see you. And this is a file I wish you all success, and I really feel like we've been given a punch to the stomach here right now, so I'm really concerned about moving forward. You've talked about how you've reached out to your colleagues in Europe, both you, the Prime Minister, the Health Minister. What I'm trying to figure out, in trade is done through rules, not through diplomacy. Diplomacy is part of it, don't get me wrong, but rules are in place so that you can't have one country succeeding another country. The rules are the rules. So is it not fair to say in this scenario, is it a diplomatic scenario where you can actually get an exemption? Or is this something where you can't, and then now we're subject to the rules of the mechanism?
Well, thank you so much, and it's nice to see you. To the honourable member, Happy New Year. It's good that we all continue to have to work to make sure that our top priority is Canadians, and making sure that Canadians are supported through this, and certainly making sure that they get vaccines is absolutely critical. I think the answer is it is both. We must work with with our allies in the European Union to make sure that the rules, which is the advanced purchase agreements that Canada has entered into, is respected, and that there is no delay in the receipt of vaccines, but also making sure that we are monitoring the mechanism to make sure that the EU is respecting the trade obligations under WTO rules, and that their mechanism is applied on non-discriminatory basis based on international rules is also what we are doing.
So it's fair to say then the diplomacy part of it is trying to get us in the exemption. If we don't get the exemption, we're subject to the mechanism. Now, what's not clear in the mechanism is the triggering point. So I'll use an example. We're behind in schedules right now. If they have excess capacity in these facilities in Europe, can we get access to that excess capacity, or they just look at our schedule and say, nope, that's all you're allocated for this week or month or quarter? How does that all work?
Well, the questions that you're asking are exactly those details that we are working very closely with the European Union on. I think you're familiar, as I am, with the terrific team that we have on the ground that is working through this. making sure that that we have clarity of understanding, monitoring how this mechanism will be implemented is exactly the work that is taking place right now.
Okay, and fair enough. The rules are still being determined now. You've got assurances that will be treated fair. I think it's fair to say you have no assurances other than you'll be treated through the mechanism. One concern I have is the domino effect of what the EU is doing here. So the US and Australia and some other countries who said we're also in the same boat as us, what if they retaliate? What if they say, you know what? We're not going to ship any vaccinations to Canada either. We're going to keep what we have because what we're expecting to get from some of these other countries isn't going to happen. So what's happening with our other trading partners in this scenario? Are we going to see a situation where the US says, okay, nope, we're not going to ship anything to Canada. We're going to keep it all for the US, you know, necessarily not targeted at us, but we get sideswiped because we don't have the capacity.
Well, what I would say is that that throughout all of COVID-19, what has been absolutely important, and Canada taking some leadership in this, is to ensure that protectionist measures are not used, and that we fight against, and all of us fight against
But
those
we're
protectionist
seeing that
measures.
happen right now. This is a protectionist measure. Let's call it what it is. And it can be done on two levels. It can be done at the EU level, or it could be done at the state level, or a combination of both. And the EU is very good at blaming one or the other. EU blames states, state blames the EU. Meantime, we still don't get our vaccines. So it comes back to me, is the concern is, okay, what do we have for a mechanism to put pressure on the EU? And what do other countries have for a mechanism to put pressure on the EU that may cause them to react accordingly? So I think we're very vulnerable here unless we have some clear strategic plans on how we're going to react. And it can't be just say we're going to talk to somebody. We actually have to show some force here, possibly. So does that mean we pull out of NATO? Does that mean we draw a line in the sand? Because this is a protectionist measure, and this is very, very serious. And I get very concerned because I see these trade rules already coming under a tremendous amount of pressure. And now you're trying to say diplomacy might have some influence in it, and we're seeing it in the list that they've made up for exempted countries. But we're not on that list, and you won't tell us why we're not on that list, and they won't tell us why. And that, to me, is a problem too. Is why did you single us out? And you say it's not just us; it's the U.S. and Australia and other countries. Well, U.S. has production capacity. Australia has production capacity. We don't. So it is a lot more serious for us than it is for those countries. So how do we know where we sit going forward?
Well, that's very important, and where I agree with the member here is that that we do take this with absolute seriousness. This is a priority for the government, for me, and for my colleagues. This is also a global problem that requires global solutions. So protectionist measures, will not help, and we do need to work as a global community together to ensure that Canada gets our vaccines under the purchase agreements that we have entered into, but we must also work together to ensure that that vaccines are indeed available to the world. One country is.
Got one more question. Sorry, Minister.
Sorry, Mr. Hoback. You're already at your time according to my clock. My apologies.
You got a fast clock.
Oh, I think if you had a very brief question, Mr. Hoback.
Yeah, to Mr. Verhul, what is our options to retaliate? Is this legal? And what are our options to enforce what we have in place right now with our contracts?
Well, I think that the answer to this is that that I have received repeated assurances from my colleagues.
I was asking Mr. Verhul.
Well, I think as the minister, I get to answer the question.
I was looking for a bureaucratic answer with certain detail, not a ministerial answer. No offense, but I just know Steve's extensive knowledge in this file. He could probably give us a good lay of the land and what our options are.
We haven't heard from any of our officials to date. Does one of the officials want to answer Mr. Hoback's question, please?
Just a quick point of order, Madam Chair. It's not that I'm against hearing the answer, but time spent here is time that comes off the back end where other members may yet have an opportunity to ask questions.
Thank you for the point, Mr. Blakey. Then, Mr. Hoback, I attempted to...
You got your 7 minutes.
See if we can't manage that again. Mr. Sarai.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister Ng. Appreciate all your work on this. I do want to know, when we signed CITA, we have a investment accord system, I believe, that resolves issues or potential issues that could come about. We probably have protective measures within CITA when we signed it on particular incidents like this. Do you think we are protected under CITA against any measures if, in fact, the European Union decides to do anything counter to what the assurances they've given you?
Well, thank you so much to the honourable member for that question. And CITA is a robust and good agreement that is good for Canadian exporters. And perhaps on that, on that somewhat technical question, I'm going to send that to my officials who can provide a bit of a response.
Thanks, Minister. I think we'll turn to Steve, given that he is the former negotiator. Steve?
Yeah, okay, thank you, and good morning, everyone. Yes, certainly we do have provisions in CITA that do specify that export restrictions are illegal. However, there are exceptions to that, in particular if the export restrictions are applied on a temporary basis, if they're to prevent a critical shortage, and if it relates to essential supplies. So on those particular measures, the EU is probably on solid ground. What we're looking at more closely is the application of the measure by the EU, and in particular looking at the exemptions they provided to certain countries. And in that respect, we're looking to see whether there is a discriminatory approach being taken by the EU, and we're seeking assurances from the EU on that issue, and we're also expecting that they will notify this measure to the WTO and explain how they feel it is consistent with their obligations under the WTO as well as under CITA.
Then I'll just go further, Mr. Varela, and not to give our strategy away, but has Canada prepared a strategy if it comes to that we would have countervailing or punitive strategy against any member that would try to restrict their commitments to Canada? Similar to what we did with the USMCS, or prior to that, when some steel tariffs, unfair steel tariffs were given, we hit back to the US. I'm assuming Canada has a strategy and is prepared to use something like that.
Well, we're certainly doing a full spectrum of analysis of potential options we may have to look at. But at this point, our primary objective is making sure that we get the vaccine deliveries. So we're waiting to see whether the EU process is going to pose any interruptions or not. But we're certainly prepared that if this process does start to create problems, we will have steps we can take in light of that. But at this point, we're still under the expectation that the assurances provided to us by the EU will be upheld. And until we get some evidence that that's not going to happen, we're not really in a position to pursue those other measures.
Minister Ng, I want to thank you for fighting for Canadians' interests and fighting to make sure we have those assurances and continue going forward. I'm just wondering, in a long term, is Canada looking at a strategy and future talks? This may not be imminent right now, but to protect against some of these protective measures that or strategies that countries are starting to get into, where they're hoarding or not obliging on their commitments. Going forward, this could have repercussions to them as well, obviously on valuable pharmaceuticals that go to them or other trade imports that they do. Is Canada looking at a dialogue along with other member states that safe, fair, honored trade systems are respected going forward?
Well, thank you to the honourable member for that question. I mean, this is exactly the work that the Ottawa Group has been doing. This is exactly the work that we have been doing with, on WTO reform. I mean, we've been very clear that this global crisis should not be an excuse to, to turn inwards, to stop trading, or to, levy protectionist measures. It's precisely why that why both the European Union and Canada, through our leadership, has put forward the Trade and Health Initiative. It was launched in June of 2020 through the Ottawa Group Ministerial, and the Ottawa Group ministers have endorsed such a plan to engage the WTO membership, and it was put forward to the General Council in December. So now our officials around that table are looking to identify specific actions related to export restrictions, trade facilitation, technical regulations, tariffs, and transparency. So this is precisely the work that Canada has always been doing, even before COVID-19, and certainly COVID-19 has demonstrated the importance of this work. So we are continuing to pursue this work not only with Ottawa Group members, but with the larger WTO members, so that there are measures and rules that we can all work at to prevent the types of restrictive measures that we have been seeing, around the world. But suffice it to say that this is important. I'm very pleased with the work that we have been leading on this front to ensure that supply chains and that predictability, particularly for essential goods and essential medicines, continue to flow freely across borders.
Thank you, Minister. On to Mr. Abatai.
Yes, thank you. Chair, and I would like to do a point of order here to ask if we can go 15 to 20 minutes longer to fulfill the delays that we've had so far between preparation and other stuff. So,
yes, Minister, I realized, well, a couple of things. One, our normal time we would be up at 1 o'clock, but we did get started a bit late, and the motion does indicate 2 hours. That was adopted by committee. Now that's all subject to everybody's scheduling, though. It doesn't mean that everybody is necessarily available. Hopefully they would be. Mr. Dhaliwal.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I appreciate the suggestion of member from Alberta, but in fact, I have scheduled meetings starting right at 10 o'clock PST and 1 o'clock Eastern time, so I would not be able to stay here. So I would request the minister to finish this off if we can, and by 1 o'clock.
I would again, I would make the request again. I know Mr. Dhaliwal could have other arrangement, but I'm sure it will be, I think, will be important for this very, very important discussion today, since we're having the minister, and we're thankful of her response coming back quickly on Monday morning to be able to be with us today. I think this will be great to get the full benefit of having the minister here.
Well, just to make a suggestion to the committee, was it possible that the minister has been here answering all of the questions until now, and we now have the benefit of actually having the officials as well. Is it possible that the minister could leave and we continue with the officials? Is that something that the committee would be all right with? Throw it out there as a thought. Again, Mr. Dhaliwal.
We would like to have another round, Chair, if that's okay.
Madam Chair, may I suggest that the Conservative member is actually wasting precious time by engaging in this debate? And furthermore, we received this emergency 106 request on Saturday night, and the minister has appeared on Monday and has moved calls with international counterparts on this very issue in order to appear before committee. And I would suggest that important work on behalf of all Canadians needs to continue. So I would move that the Conservative member use the valuable time that he has with the minister still before him in order to ask questions.
Yeah, Chair, I was expecting the answer from you with all respect to Ms. Bendayan, but I'll move forward. I do have like to start with my questions, please.
Yeah.
Minister, if there's a term here, if it's not in writing, never happened. Do you agree?
What I would say is that that assurances by a vice president and commissioner of the European Union, as well as the European Union president to a prime minister, is a good thing.
Wouldn't you rather, Minister, to see the assurance in writing rather than verbal?
What we are all working very hard at is to ensure that.
No, but the question is very clear. Would you rather see this assurance in writing rather than verbal?
Continuously, I have something today. What is this
Come
about?
on.
Sorry. Can I? Okay. What we're working very hard on here is to ensure that that the shipments of vaccines from Europe are not impacted as a result of this mechanism to Canada.
Speaking of which, in the readout from your meeting or your call actually with the European Commissioner of Trade, it says that it mentioned the word minimize the impact. So there is an impact, or at least foreseen impact, of their move. So if we have this in writing, we could have probably have a better assurance. Don't you agree?
I think it's really important that that I continue to do this work with absolute urgency, which I am and which the government is, to ensure that that the impacts, that there aren't impacts on vaccines coming into Canada, and that our vaccine schedule for Canadians continue.
Well, I gather, Minister, that you probably don't see any difference between having a written assurance or verbal assurance, which is, I see that odd in any business dealing whatsoever. Did you ask for a written assurance from the European Union?
I did not ask for something in writing. I did have 2 conversations with my counterpart, and in those conversations, as I've said, I made very clear that Canada expects that our advanced purchase agreements are respected, and that vaccines to Canada will not be impacted by the mechanism that the European Union has put forward.
Then why the mention in the readout that in case of any impact or will leave any impact, why that word was mentioned in the readout? I think that raises concerns among Canadians, and if anyone would read this readout, would be able to at least gather that there is something that hasn't been told to Canadian, and I do believe that we all here to provide a lot of transparency, full transparency to Canadians, so we don't have to run to a problem and we go past 2021 to vaccinate all Canadians.
Well, the member is absolutely correct that we all must provide transparency. That is why I make readouts. That is why we absolutely share readouts immediately, so that I'm able to share with Canadians the discussions that I've had. It's precisely why I thought it was absolutely important upon the invitation by this committee to come to the committee, so that I'm able to speak to all of you and to Canadians.
Minister, in this cloud of uncertainty and lack of information, I think will be very beneficial and very important if you can provide in writing the schedule of shipping or deliveries, whatever you want to call it, of receiving the vaccination. And I would like to see that table at this committee, please.
Well, thank you for that, and I think with respect to the member's request, we will endeavor to do our best.
Thank you, Minister. On to Mr. Sheehan.
Well, thank you very much, Minister, for appearing on such short notice. I think this underlines and highlights you're working around the clock, and I really appreciate it. Last Wednesday, on the 27th, at 1:04 p.m. In Sault Ste. Marie, the first vaccine was administered at the Finnish rest home. It was a resident named Larry Grekola, and he said, and I quote, "The vaccine means happiness. I'm happy to get it, and it's the start for the country to get back to normal. it feels good to be part of making history. I thought that was really well said. So to my community and the communities across Canada that are feeling those sediments, could you please explain to the committee how the cabinet committee on the federal response to the coronavirus disease, working amongst yourself, and I know you're a member of it, but also working with provinces and territories, to get them distributed to the finished rest homes of Canada. Thank you, and other rest homes. I'm using that as an example.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to the honorable member to that question, and I think what you've highlighted is absolutely the priority that we are all placing on this. Yes, I do serve on the COVID-19 Committee of Cabinet, and the purpose there, of course, is to enable us to work whole of government. It's to enable myself, in this particular circumstance, to work very closely with Minister Anand, who is in regular contact with the drug suppliers, but also with Minister LeBlanc, who is working with top priority and urgency with provincial and territorial colleagues to make sure that the vaccines are indeed making their way as expeditiously, as quickly, as readily to Canadians. There's nothing more important to all of us, and I would say this is all of us on all sides of the House to fight COVID-19 and to be sure that we are doing this using a Team Canada approach, but making sure that absolute top of mind on the one hand, ensuring that emergency measures are there for Canadians and for businesses, and at the same time making sure that we ensure vaccines come into the country and that they are deployed provincially. There's nothing more important to Canadians than our government staying absolutely on top of this and working diligently and very hard and to the best of our ability to make sure that there is no delay.
Thank you very much. And I guess the question that people are asking right now, we were everyone was very, very pleased to see how aggressive we were and to get the vaccines, and the agreements done well, ahead of expectation of some critics. And we have made the statement over and over again that by, I believe, the end of September, that vaccines will be available. Minister, in your opinion, are we on track to meet our continued commitment of having a vaccine available to all Canadians that want one by the end of September?
Yes, to the short answer to that is yes, we are on track to ensure that all Canadians who wish to have a vaccine will get one for free by the end of September. Canada received vaccines, as all of you know, starting in December, which is ahead of many other countries. In the first quarter, by the end of first quarter this year, we expect to have 3 million people vaccinated. And certainly the vaccines that we expect to come in just from the approved vaccines, so Moderna and Pfizer, will be in the order of 6 million by the end of March, 20 million between April and June, and over 70 million doses by the end of September. And that is just from the approved vaccines. There are other vaccines, of course, that Canada has procured, and that is also going through the process of approvals at Health Canada. And we are absolutely with priority and urgency to ensure that this work continues and remains on schedule.
Thank you. And do you feel that the work that as a trade minister and securing the multitude of trade deals, with pretty well every country in the world, has made it easier, for you to pick up the phone and get an answer right away and to have those dialogues and to have that trust relationship? Because one thing the readout doesn't give us is just sort of like the feeling. Could you just give us a feeling about how your phone calls are going?
Well, I think that Canada has certainly been has been providing leadership work through the Ottawa Group, working with many like-minded countries who are part of those very agreements that you spoke of in Europe as well as in Asia, and Canada's reputation for being a country that respects the rule of law, and the multilateral rules-based trading order and the work that we are doing, working with the Ottawa Group around WTO reform, really enables Canada to to work on issues that are shared among our colleagues and certainly like-minded colleagues. So this work of ensuring that supply chains remain open, critical food and medical supplies continue to flow, is very much a part of this work outside of before the pandemic, and that work during the pandemic absolutely is even more important.
Okay, thank you, Minister. On to Mr. Savard Tremblay for 2 minutes. Whoops. I believe Mr. Tremblay's not. There you are.
Excusez-moi.
Sorry, there's always a bit of a delay with the interpretation. I have questions for the officials this time around, if they can answer. I'd like to know, since we don't know as of today if the contracts for vaccine supply have a calendar or a total number according to certain dates. We've seen that there have been disruptions or delays. Why have we had issues for the last few weeks, and what can guarantee that we won't have more delays in the future?
Monsieur Savard Tremblay, the honourable member, let me just say that that this is absolutely a top priority for the government, and on that, you've asked it of the officials. So perhaps there, I will just turn to my officials who could give you a response.
Well, thanks, Minister, and thanks, Madam Chair. You know, it has been a priority for us to be clearing the way as to the greatest extent possible for the delivery of the vaccines that have been contracted under the APA. That continues to be the top priority for the government generally. As the Minister has been saying over the course of today's presentation, that has involved extensive conversations across our network in Europe to make sure that there is full delivery of the vaccines that we have expected to receive, and that work continues. We've received the assurances that we have, and we continue to make sure that that will unfold as is expected over the course of the next period of time. And that's why it's critical that we have the degree of engagement that we have at all levels, from the Prime Minister down.
Okay, thank you very much. On to Mr. Blakey for 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For over 30 years now, Liberals and Conservatives both have taken arguments about the importance of trade between countries and lifted it up to a kind of blind article of faith that globalized trade is always the way to find a solution. And I think the pandemic has really emphasized the inadequacy of relying solely on that dogma, if you will. We're seeing it with respect to vaccines. We don't have domestic vaccine. Well, we do actually have some domestic vaccine production, but Canada's adherence to doesn't seem to have secured the right to produce vaccine here at home. We've heard that we have the capacity through the NRC to produce the AstraZeneca vaccine, but we don't have the right. We've seen it in other sectors. I mean, here we've got an airline industry that's in distress. We don't have any meaningful strategy for the airline industry here. It's all laissez-faire. Oil and gas, we've lost a lot of the value-added work over the last 20 or 30 years, and we focus only on extraction and then shipping raw resource out of the country. I'm just wondering, like, this to me seems to be a little bit of the hens coming home to roost. And we hear the minister and other MPs on the panel today talk about the importance of strengthening global supply chains. But all our partners who have also engaged in this kind of globalized trade have hedged their bets, have understood that they still need industrial planning at home, that they still need to identify priorities like vaccine production in the case of a crisis. And Canada seems to be one of the few countries in the West that hasn't done any of that hedging. And I'm wondering if the minister has learned any lessons about a kind of blind faith in globalized trade and the approach to managing Canada's economy, making sure that important strategic industries or things like vaccine production,
that we actually have a plan for how to look after ourselves instead of simply relying on the good faith of international partners, which we've seen can change very quickly in a crisis.
Well, I want to thank the honourable member for that very important question. I'm not sure I can get the full answer in the time that I've got, but let me give this a bit of a try. I'm very proud to be a part of a government where the trade agreements that are negotiated are inclusive. Inclusive because the government believes, and I think the member opposite may agree, that that where there is trade, that the benefits of that trade must also accrue to workers and to people in those respective countries, and certainly to Canadians. So small and medium-sized businesses, Indigenous entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, racialized entrepreneurs, new immigrant entrepreneurs, and in the agreements that we have negotiated, whether it is the recent CUSMA or CPTPP and CITA, I mean, they have high standards that include particular chapters that have provisions for labor, provisions that protect the environment. So I think it's absolutely important that we have the arrangements that we do, and that we are, steadfast at being able to ensure that trade really, and the benefits of it, accrue to all Canadians. And I want to thank the honourable member for the work that he championed around greater transparency, particularly around getting, sharing with Canadians, seeking input from Canadians and our colleagues, before we enter into into an agreement. And I'm going to be looking forward to doing that probably with the first one coming up, which is with the United Kingdom. But suffice it to say that that inclusive trade and ensuring that as businesses grow, that workers are a part of that growth, and that more people are able to access the benefits through the economy is very, very much the work that I look forward to doing every single day in this portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister. On to Ms. Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, it was reported the EU's executive received notice from Belgium, which would allow it to limit vaccine exports. And of course, this is a primary location where Canada would be getting vaccines from. We've heard from you today that you don't have any written assurances or commitments from the EU. So are you able to table today any written assurances or commitments that you've received from the government of Belgium, where our Pfizer vaccines are shipped from, and from the government of Spain, where the Moderna vaccines would be shipped from to Canadians?
Muted. I want to thank my honorable critic for that question. As I said earlier, I did speak to my Belgian counterpart yesterday. Perhaps it was late yesterday, so perhaps the readout hasn't made its way out yet, but certainly that will be, as I always do. And I did get assurances from the Vice Prime Minister on Canada's shipments, and that the mechanism will not affect Canada's vaccine shipments. I am going to be speaking to my counterpart in Spain, which is the reason that I must do that. It is scheduled, and in all of this, nothing is more urgent or important than to make sure that we are working with our colleagues, both member states as well as the European Union, to ensure there's no delay.
Great, thank you, Minister. And a readout is not a transcript, and verbal assurance is not the same as a written commitment. But I want to go on a different topic here. Minister, yesterday the Pan America's Health Organization stated that countries in the Americas, including Canada, were notified of first COVID-19 vaccine allocations through COVAX. With export controls now in the EU, do you anticipate similar measures affecting this allocation?
Well, that's a really important question, particularly around the COVAX facility. I mean, Canada is, contributes to this, and indeed, our contribution to the global response to COVID-19 is around the order of $480 million. And I think I said this a little earlier. As long as one country is at risk, I think we're all at risk. So all of us are working together in support of the COVAX facility to ensure that the global vaccination effort also takes place.
Okay, so Minister, can you table the letter or information that the Government of Canada would have received from the Pan America's Health Organization?
I'm just learning about that letter right now. So why don't I take it under advisement and come back to the committee if that's all right?
So if you're not able to table that today, can you at least tell the committee how many doses Canada will be receiving through COVAX and when we will be receiving them?
I don't have that information readily available. The work, of course, with respect to COVAX is ably handled by my colleague in international development, but I'm happy to return back to the committee with that information.
Minister, another concern with these export controls from the EU is that even if they do not restrict vaccine exports to Canada, that bureaucracy and paperwork for approval will slow down the process. And are you aware of this concern, and did you raise this with your EU counterpart? And can you table for the committee any analysis that your department has done on how this might impact our vaccine strategies of procurement coming to Canada?
Well, that's a really important question, and this is exactly why we have, and our officials on the ground in the missions in the European Union are working with their counterparts and colleagues at the working level, both with member states as well as with the European Union, and also with the companies through our Trade Commissioner Service to ensure that the operationalizing of this mechanism does not provide any delays, and that we are supporting the companies as they need to meet their obligations under this mechanism, and that this work is done not only at my level but at the working level to ensure that there aren't any impacts on Canada's shipment of vaccines.
Thank you very much, Minister. I'm going to suggest that 1 o'clock is our regular completion time, but that possibly we excuse the minister to go and do the important work that she's doing, and the officials, I understand, can stay for an additional 15 minutes, if that's okay with the committee, and then we can continue on for an additional 15 minutes with whatever members can remain. So if that's all right with everything, Minister, thank you so very much for your information. Please, good luck on the work you're doing on behalf of all Canadians.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for having me here. And thank you so much, colleagues, for all of your questions today. And bye-bye. See you.
Okay, Mr. Raya, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The minister has left, but I wanted to thank her and her colleagues for the excellent work that the government is doing in battling this pandemic. The people of Nepean and all Canadians appreciate the work that is being done. I hope the officials will convey my sincere thanks to the minister and her colleagues. On the question of the vaccines, there has been a talk about the written agreement and the verbal assurances. I'm glad that we have a written advance purchase agreement. And as the minister said, one thing before I go in there has been a suggestion, I think if I'm not mistaken, that we have to retaliate. I wish the officials recognize that starting a fight with retaliation is not, does not lead to any solution. The diplomacy, the way that it has been handled diplomatically, that is the right way to go. And I hope the government continues to do in the same way. As the minister mentioned, this is a global problem and we need to find global solutions. In particular, I would like to know what the Ottawa group is doing to face this problem with the vaccine supply.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You know, the Ottawa Group has been an extraordinarily important forum for discussing a range of issues that are confronting the World Trade Organization. We've been active now for a couple of years in convening the Ottawa Group with a view to talking about not only some of the reform issues that have been on the WTO agenda for a period of time now, so issues like transparency, negotiation, dispute settlement, but also as a result of the pandemic, most recently, some of the trade aspects of dealing with the pandemic, and that's included issues around trade measures, but also transparency and looking forward as to how to develop rules with respect to trade liberalization pertaining to health. And so the Ottawa Group continues to be very active in that regard. We have conversations at the level of officials and ministers that advance that set of agendas. The minister made reference earlier in this presentation to the communication that was developed through the Ottawa Group with respect to health, and that continues to be one of our central focuses in the work that we're doing. And it really is with a view to ensuring that the WTO is best placed to address the sorts of challenges that have been highlighted by the circumstances that we are collectively facing.
Thank you. You know, Canada is a trading nation. 60% of our GDP comes from trade. This pandemic has created challenging times for the international trade. Protectionist measures are being contemplated by several countries. But in the long run, it is in our interest that we see that the trade goes on, you know, through the multilateral and bilateral mechanisms we have in place. Have you witnessing any protectionist measure from any country or any region or any bloc that is affecting Canada trade today?
We've been very alert to any of the possible ramifications of the pandemic on our supply chains, and that's a work that we've continued to do. And that's manifested itself in a number of ways. I've already mentioned the Ottawa Group and some of the efforts that have been pursued there, but we've also worked with other groupings of like-minded states to promote the most liberalized approach to trade during this period, with a view to make sure that supply chains remain open and that our vital interests are reflected through that kind of process. So that continues to be a priority for us in the trade world, and we have been very active participants in those conversations.
This pandemic, have you seen any significant impact on Canadian exports or Canadian imports during the last 12 months?
We've been reasonably successful in maintaining a free flow of goods during this period, and it's due to a number of factors, not least the kind of initiatives that we have been pursuing with key partners. So our trade with the United States, for instance, has continued to be very positive during a period where, you know, obviously there have been particular challenges. But I think it's a question for continued vigilance, and it is one of the reasons why the discussions that we're having in the fora where we are pursuing these issues are important, like the WTO.
Thank you, Mr. I've just been informed that both of our departmental people here both have apparent conflicts. So if we can do Mr. Hoback for 5 minutes and then thank everybody and move on, if that's okay with the committee. Mr. Hoback?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'll start off. It looks like we're going to be in the mechanism. So any idea of the functioning of the mechanism, how it's going to work? So what are the trigger mechanisms that we're beholden to? Can you give us some insight into that?
Well, our understanding as to how the mechanism will operate is obviously evolving in the sense that this is still early days with respect to its operation, but this is one of the reasons why we are as engaged as we are across the network. But our understanding is that the process will have two stages to it in the sense that there will be a member state level analysis that is done based on information that they will receive from exporters, and there will be an analysis that is done at the commission level. Those are to happen according to the regulation that's been promulgated within 48 hours, with the possibility of an extension in extraordinary circumstances, or in unusual circumstances, I should say. But that is the process that's set out in the rule that has been developed.
Okay, and then as far as the time frame for this mechanism to be in place, is there an end date in place? Is this just a short-term mechanism, or is this actually going to be something that could be extended out into a longer period of time right throughout the vaccination period?
Under the trade rules, as Steve was setting out earlier, it is required that these be temporary measures. The rule as it's drafted is basically in force until the end of March. But that wouldn't necessarily foreclose the possibility of a replacement rule be put in place. But as it's drafted right now, it's the end of March.
And then under this mechanism, again, we're in a scenario now where we haven't had vaccinations for a couple of weeks. There's talk about we're going to get them back. We're going to get it, backloaded. But can you do that in this mechanism? Can the company actually contribute and do that and say, hey, we missed this shipment this week, so we're going to make it up and ship 2 shipments to make it up? Like, how's that measurement going on?
Well, our objective is to make sure that there's no disruption. That's been our objective throughout the conversation since this has begun, and that continues to be where we're focusing, and those are the assurances that we've received. So our focus throughout the conversations that we're having at all levels are with a view to avoiding disruption.
So then, again, I'm trying to get through it from a layman's perspective. So I'm sitting here, okay, EU's short X million, let's say 3 million doses this week. So, okay, now these companies have to make up that 3 million doses before they can actually export to another country?
Well, what we have been told is, and the assurances we have received, is there will be no disruption to the exports that we are expecting, and so that continues to be the undertaking that we've been given.
And that's where I have a problem. You have diplomats or you have politicians talking to politicians, but this is a regulation. This is actually embedded in law. So if you see a scenario where the numbers don't lie, this is where we're at in the EU, and then the mechanism kicks in and it's going to have to impact us. Now, if it impacts us this week, does it also impact us next week when the numbers in the EU get back to normal? How does that function and the timeframes around that?
I would just go back, Madam Chair, to the basic point. The undertakings we've been given suggest there will not be disruption, and that is the objective of all of our conversations. So,
yeah, see, I have a hard time with that because they're running at 100% capacity as it is. How do they squeeze out some more next week to make up for the EU shortfall? If they could, they would have already. Are they going to pull from other capacity, somewhere else in the world, and does that put it in a better shape? And then the question of transshipment, shipments that come through the EU on their way to Canada, do they get seized, or how do they function and operate?
Madam Chair, I as I say, our objective here has been absolutely consistent, and the assurance we've been given do suggest that there will be no disruption. So that is precisely what we are objecting, or that is our objective, and that's our expectation.
No, fair enough. I get that, but it's put in place to protect the EU, to make sure that they've got enough vaccinations, and to say we won't be disrupted means we're giving preferable treatment versus other countries. You can't do that in a regulation. That's why you have rules in place. And if they do that, then I'm sure Mr. Verhul is going to actually be very excited to take them to WTO or whatever appropriate means to make sure they don't do it again. So I think all we got is assurances that we're going to go through the mechanism and it'll be fair. That's it. And we really won't know that until we're through it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hoback, and thank you to our departmental officials. We appreciate that, and the minister, and to all of the committee. I think some very valuable information was done today, and knowing that they have to leave. Yes, Ms. Gray?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to bring to your attention that during the course of this committee, that Liberal member of the committee had screenshot the back end of this committee meeting and posted it online, which I don't believe follows parliamentary rules.
Absolutely. That is not something that we are encouraged or allowed to do. So whichever member would have taken that shot and posted it, would you please remove it? That is not something that any of us are to do when we're having our meetings. And thank you for raising it, Ms. Gray. All right, so I will move adjournment. Thank you all very much. We will see you all on Friday.